Yeah, so that's the way to begin. So hi, my name is Curtis. I would like to begin by inspiring you today. If you could grab the Bibles at the ends of the rows and chuck them out, because you can't learn anything from books. I'm just kidding. Please don't do that. But feel free to grab one of those paperback Bibles and take it home with you and make it yours. Before we go any further, man, you would not believe the number of things that our team, our tech team, our band had to overcome this morning in order to help make worship happen. And they did a killer job leading us this morning, didn't they? Seriously, band, super proud of you guys, the things that you guys fought through this morning to get everything to work. Thank you for doing that. So we're going to jump in. We're going to continue our series called GeneroUS, and we're going to get to Ecclesiastes 5, page 542. And your paperback house Bibles, if you want to get there, we'll get there eventually. I want to say welcome to if you're hanging out with us online. We'll be using the NIV version today, so feel free to go over there to Ecclesiastes 5. We'll get there here in a bit. Now, there's a craze. My daughter, Hadley, my oldest daughter, Hadley, she's 5 years old, and she started kindergarten this year. And I was super excited for her to get to start kindergarten because I don't know, I was really looking forward to it. She likes to learn. She's been doing really well. And so I was excited for her to go to school, make new friends, and friends that she'll kind of continue to have kind of throughout the years, or at least, that would be the hope. And I was prepared for a couple different things to happen as she began going to school, getting to know new things, exposed to other things. But I was not prepared for some of the changes that would happen at the house. And one of those is a craze that has been taking over the last couple months. It's been, I guess, really the last year or so, but it's really been in my house the last couple months or so. It's been a craze that's kind of been happening with young, like elementary school-age girls, maybe a wider range than that. Does anybody want to take a guess at what that? Okay, slime. That's in there. We're going to get there. It's, what? Vine? Oh, baby shark, do. Yeah, that, It's actually, so all of those things have made appearances in the house, but they haven't stuck. They haven't stuck as well as this one. The craze that has filled my home, which I dreamed about as a young man, is glittery rainbow unicorns. Yes, unicorns all throughout my house. My three daughters, they were unicorns for Halloween. On our dining room table, we have unicorn lip gloss, which is just glittery lip gloss, which I think was a thing before unicorns were a thing, but it's not glittery lip gloss, it's unicorn lip gloss. Please get it right. Unicorn lip gloss, what else? We got, there's a unicorn hair bow, but I really feel like they missed out. The unicorn hair bow doesn't have a horn. Right? I feel like somebody's really missing a major piece of marketing here. A unicorn hair bow should have a horn. So, you can sell that idea, maybe to somebody. But the unicorn hair bow does not have a hair bow. It is just a glittery, multicolored hair bow without a horn. Wah, wah. But so unicorns have kind of like filled the Teel household lately. And so I've been kind of fascinated with this idea of unicorns. But it has gone in a new direction that I really wasn't expecting. Because those things I can understand. I can get behind that. But there was something that I saw recently that I just really can't get behind. My wife and I, Abby and I, we got to go on a date night recently. And we went out to eat. We got some dessert. And then we're just to do something fun, something different. We'd never done anything like this before. We each got a $5 bill. And we went into Five Below. And we agreed once we got into Five Below, we were not going to speak to each other. And we were going to buy something. We were going to buy one thing with that $5 that we were then, once we left, we were going to give as a gift to the other person. So it could be something that was meaningful for them, could be something that reminded you of them, it could be just something fun that you thought that they needed. Now, I went into Five Below, and I mean, it is unicorns everywhere. And I wasn't expecting to find something that I thought was just absolutely perfect in Five Below, and it was this. Unicorn poop. It's like, wait, well, hold on, wait a minute. What is this? Okay, so maybe you've seen it before. It's a practical joke. They have usually these are printed in brown. And it looks like a real turd that you would leave sitting in the middle of the floor and someone would be like, what is that? So this is a glittery, multicolored turd that they sell as unicorn poop. Right, it's not like sold as something else. I mean, it's sold as unicorn poop, and so naturally, that's what I got Abby. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I did not get Abby unicorn poop. Although I did think it was funny. I was not about to venture down that road. See, but here's the thing. So it did spark a conversation between Abby and I because this was the last one, the one I saw in Five Below. So these things are selling. And I thought, like, how are these things selling? Like, where is this coming from? Why are people buying this? And on the way out the door, we gave each other our gift. And on the drive home, it sparked a conversation between Abby and I. And she shared with me what the hottest expected toy of the Christmas season is. Anybody want to guess at this? What's the expected hottest selling toy of the Christmas season? Okay, it has something to do with unicorn, has something to do with slime. It is the Poopsie Surprise Unicorn. Right. Yes, look, I mean, it's the Poopsie Surprise Unicorn. Guess what it does? It magically poops slime. It magically poops slime. Oh, now see, here's kind of where this conversation, here's essentially where this conversation went to with this idea is I was like, where does this come from? Why do people want this? And I found out that my oldest daughter, Hadley, this is what she wants for Christmas. And just being honest with you, you could judge me as a parent all you want. She will very likely get this for Christmas. Now, see, here's the thing, though. I got to thinking about this. If Hadley were left to herself, okay, so no YouTube videos, no commercials, no like friends at school talking about it, I doubt very seriously that this would make the top of Hadley's Christmas list. But it does. And so the question that began to get asked, what my wife and I were talking about was, how does this happen? Like, why is this what she wants? And a huge part of that answer is she is seeing other people want it and get it. She sees the joy that pooping slime provides, I guess, you know, when she sees the commercials online. But she's seeing other people want it, and she's seeing other people get it, and we are the same way. You see, when it comes to, like, things, we see it, and there's something that is within us, and it clicks within us that says, that's cool, I'd really like that. And so it started me wondering and wanting to know, like, I wonder what I would want if I did not know what you want or what you had. And I realized something. I figured out a problem. I figured out my problem anyway. Maybe this isn't your problem, this is my problem. But my problem is I know too much. I know too much about what you have that I don't. And here's where this causes an issue. And if this isn't your problem, then like none of what we're talking about this morning is good for you. But this is a problem for me, that I know too much about what you have that I don't have. And the reason that that becomes a problem is because this makes me dangerously discontent. This makes me dangerously discontent because I find myself feeling like I need and want things that I do not actually need. And knowing what others have that I don't makes me want things that I don't necessarily need. And it seems to me, it has been my experience for me, that the more I get, the more that I want. And the more that I get never quite fulfills me in the way that I think that it will. And see, this in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's not a terrible thing. But often, I find myself getting distracted by these things, and I will pursue those things that I see you have, that I see others have, and that I don't. And in the long run, what happens is it takes me off course, and it causes me to lose my ability to get what I really actually want, or what I really actually need. And here's really where the difficult part comes in. And maybe this isn't your problem, maybe this is just mine, but sometimes what I really actually want is just to be able to make it another week. Sometimes I just want to be able to pay those medical bills from that emergency that I was not expecting. Sometimes I just want to be able to pay the energy bill in order to keep the house warm, right? Sometimes I want to be able to go and buy groceries for food that I like and want to eat rather than just what I can afford to put on the table. You see, and when things get like that, I'm not sure, once again, I'm not sure this is your problem. Maybe this is just my problem. But when things get like that, you know what I tend to do when I find myself saying, man, I have no idea how I'm going to be able to pay for that expense that I just didn't foresee. What I do when I find myself faced with a problem like that is I go, God, please. God, would you please come through? God, would you please show up and provide for me? Would you show up and work in my finances in a way where I'm able to handle and take care of this? And maybe you've never done that, but I have definitely done that. And you know what that is? You know what that simple, quick prayer like that, you know what that is? That's an invitation. That is me inviting God to show up and be active in my finances. And if you're like me, when there is a problem, you invite God in. I want to ask you probably the most difficult question that I've ever been posed with my finances. And that is, if I would ask God to show up in my finances when there is a problem, why not invite God in before there's a problem? You see, if I would go and I would say, God, would you please show up? God, would you please provide? Once I'm in the problem and I would invite him to be active in my finances, why not find out what God has to say and invite him to show up and be active before there ever is a problem? Now, the good news is that God knew this would be something we would struggle with long before we ever identified the problem. And so what I want to really invite you to do is I want you to start a note section in your phone. I want you to take one of those paperback Bibles home with you, write it in there. Get your camera ready, snap some pictures, because we're going to cover just a couple pieces of wisdom, and I want you to go home and I want you to look at this for yourself and figure out how it applies in your life and what it would look like for you to invite God in before there is a problem, because the reality is I have no right at all to tell you what to do with your finances, with any of this. But I know, maybe this isn't a problem for you, but this has been a problem for me. And this is things that I have found and things that I have started doing that have been extremely helpful for me. And I think, since we've asked God to show up and help us out financially before, I wanted to pass on some wisdom that he offers to help us avoid problems in the first place. So what is it that God has to say to us to help us with our finances? What would it look like to invite God in before there is a problem? And so we're going to jump in. And one of the first things I want you to see is this guy named Solomon. He writes this in Ecclesiastes 5:10. This is what he says. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. And this starts just a short section of verses. It's about 8 or 9 verses where he really goes in and starts talking about our finances. And when we read this, if you're anything like me, you read this and you go, pfft. See, this is why people have a hard time taking the Bible seriously, because I could tell you that what would make me satisfied would be to make more money. But listen to this. There's a guy named Randy Alcorn. He writes a book called The Treasure Principle, and in there he's collected some quotes from some of the richest people in the world. W.H. Vanderbilt said this: the care of $200 million is enough to kill anyone. There is no pleasure in it. John Jacob Astor wrote, I am the most miserable man on earth. John D. Rockefeller, he wrote, I have made many millions, but they have brought me zero happiness. Andrew Carnegie, he wrote, millionaires seldom smile. And Henry Ford said, I was happier when doing a mechanic's job. So there we see some of the richest people of our time saying some of the wisdom that this guy Solomon found. Now, a guy named King Solomon is the one who wrote the books of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes that are known are books of wisdom in the Bible. And it's just a bunch of godly wisdom that's collected and said, man, you can experience life the way God wants you to experience life if you're willing to live out these principles. And so King Solomon writes a bunch of this stuff down. And the Bible says that King Solomon was the wisest man to ever live. And modern day historians, they have estimated with the gold, okay, so catch this, stay with me here. This is about King Solomon. Historians have estimated with the gold that we know, not think, know King Solomon had, that King Solomon was able to grow his yearly salary, to $2 trillion a year with the gold that we know he had. U.S. Weekly estimated that King Solomon was the third richest person to ever live. And in his book, Ecclesiastes, it chronicles King Solomon's thoughts as he uses his wealth and his wisdom to pursue what would really make him happy and what would really make him content. And he still says here that it didn't matter how big I grew my salary, it just wasn't enough. It just wasn't it. It didn't do it for me. He concluded that increasing his salary didn't provide happiness the way that he thought that it would. Now, one of the many things that I personally really like about the Bible is it doesn't just kind of like shut a blind eye to realities. And if you jump 2 chapters ahead in Ecclesiastes 7, it says this, and this is just a snippet of the verse, but it says, Solomon, the same guy, writes, wisdom is a shelter as money is a shelter. Meaning, like, we got to acknowledge the fact that we live in a world where, like, we need money. And so the Bible's not just saying, well, what you really need to do is just trust God and not worry about it at all. Don't work for it. That's not what it's saying. It says, look, here's the reality. Wisdom's a shelter as money is a shelter. We got to acknowledge that we live in a world where we need to eat, we need clothes, we need a safe place to sleep at night. God gets it. That we operate in a world where those things are needed in order to provide and protect for ourselves and for our family. And so somewhere in here, there is a marriage between these two things where we recognize the benefit of money, but not being overly consumed with acquiring it and not letting it take the lead on the thing that we pursue. And so Jesus actually gets this as well. And in another place, Jesus actually jumps in and he teaches about this exact thing. He gets in, and it's his longest recording teaching in Scripture. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. And in the middle of this, Jesus drops this like one big truth bomb that really gets quickly at the heart of the issue, and the same thing that Solomon gets at. Jesus is teaching, and he says this, no one can serve two masters. Well, why, Jesus? Well, because you will either hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. And then he says this, you cannot serve both God and fill in the blank. And there are all kinds of things that we could use to fill in the blank there, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things that we could put in there. And really what he's getting at here is what you're pursuing as your number one thing. But what Jesus puts in here is extremely important because Jesus knows us better than we know ourselves, whether we want to admit it or not. And in the deep recesses of our mind, we would say, yeah, that's true. Jesus says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. And then Jesus says, no one can serve both God and money. You see, and it's not that God and money are somehow juxtaposed. It's not that God hates money. We've already talked about God acknowledges, hey, we need money to exist. We need money to operate. The problem isn't God. The problem isn't money. The problem's really us. And the way we approach our money. Because, see, get this. The problem for Jesus, it's not God. The problem's not money. The problem's really at the beginning of his statement where Jesus uses this word, master. Let's go to the next slide. It says, no one can serve two masters. Now, this part of the Bible was originally written in Greek. It was like the trade language of the day, so it's what most people were able to read. And so this word that we translate masters is really this word kurios. That's how it would be pronounced. And its idea is lordship. You see, for Jesus, the problem's not God, the problem's not money. The problem with Jesus is ownership. Who owns who? You see, we all have this number one thing that we are pursuing, and you cannot serve both God and fill in the blank. And that number one thing could be a ton of different things. It could be a job. It could be a certain number as a salary. It could be a relationship. The blank could be God. There are all kinds of things that we could put in that number one spot of that thing that we are pursuing, that thing that owns us, but wisdom and experience shows that when money becomes that number one thing, it doesn't fix things the way that we think that it will, and Jesus knows that. And Jesus knows that when we do put money in that number one spot, we become dangerously discontent because we see what others have that we don't, and it pulls us off that course to generosity and that freedom that God wants us to be able to experience in our lives. So what Jesus does in that short little teaching, that like 1 or 2 sentences, Jesus sets up this question about who or what we belong to. And ultimately, what Jesus is asking and what Solomon is driving at there is, do you own your money or does money own you? Do you own your money or does your money own you? Do I own my money or does my money own me? And Jesus jumps in and he makes this statement which ultimately gives us this question. If you're a follower of Jesus, if you're not a follower of Jesus, if you're not a student, if you're not a disciple of Jesus, you don't really have to worry about this question. But if we are a follower of Jesus, the question that we have to ask and have to wrestle with, and Jesus asks us this question because he knows that money and what money promises, shelter, potentially happiness, is the chief competitor for my heart and your heart. And if it's the chief competitor for our hearts, he knows, as our hearts go, so we go. And so what wisdom would God have us live out to where we would invite him into our finances before there is a problem? And probably the best piece of advice, the best piece of wisdom that I think Solomon offers is in Proverbs 27, verses 23 and 24. Snap a picture of this, and it's shorthanded. What I would say it is you have to know the condition of your finances. It says this, he says, be sure to know the condition of your flocks. That would be their accounts. That would be their riches. That would be the way they would know how wealthy or not wealthy they are. Solomon says, be sure to know the condition of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds, for riches do not endure forever, and a crown is not secure for all generations. One of the best and biggest pieces of wisdom that we could offer, that the Bible has to offer, is it starts with being willing to dive into the mess and understand exactly what is going on, especially. This is so true if you feel overwhelmed financially. You have got to dive in and get to know the condition and how bad it is. And sometimes that is the most difficult part. Man, our house, my house at home, we got 3 little girls, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And it amazes my wife and I how fast our house can get messy. I could spend an entire day like cleaning, putting things back where they go, sweeping, mopping, doing dishes, laundry. Like we could tag team it, knock this stuff out, and then we have dinner, and after dinner it's like, hey, go play for a little bit, and it's like, poof, like it all goes back, and I was like, well, what happened, you know? Like I need unicorns to come in and like help clean it up or something. And so here's what will happen is on Tuesdays end up being like my Saturdays, and so a lot of times I have the girls are at school and I'm at home by myself, and I'll go get to cleaning. And here's what happens with me. It is really easy for me to say, all right, got to start. It'll be a big mess. I don't really know where to start. I know. Let's turn on Netflix and start watching The Office. You know, like. No. I got to jump in. And so here's what will happen when I start to clean. When everything's a mess, you just want the whole place to be clean. And so you finally work up and muster the strength. Okay, I'm going to start. Here's what happens. I go and I start cleaning up the living room, and I find a toy that belongs in the playroom. And so I pick up the toy, and I will go and I will put the toy into the toy room. And when I put the toy in the toy room, I go, oh, that is a cup. That is a cup full of like day-old milk. Hey, listen now, this is a no judgment zone. So I get the cup, and I go and I put the cup in the sink in the kitchen. And then when I go into the kitchen, I'll find a piece of like dirty laundry. That's like, oh man, this laundry, it goes in the laundry room. So then I'll go to the laundry room and I'll put that in, and I go in the laundry room and I find something that belongs in the living room. And I got to take this there, and I'll go put that in the living room. And then when I get into the living room, I find a book that belongs on the bookshelf. And I go and I put the book. Is this only my problem? Is this anybody else? So I go put the book in the book. And then that pattern repeats itself for like an hour. And then finally I stand in the kitchen and I kind of like look where I can kind of see everything after I've been working tirelessly for like an hour and a half. And I look and nothing looks different. Like I've been doing things, but nothing's getting better. And it's so discouraging. And so I lay down on the couch and I watch reruns of The Office. And so here's something that I started doing that has made a big difference for me. And I think so often we will stop from jumping in and really knowing what's going on with us financially because it just feels like such a mess. And I'm afraid to dive in and start putting things where they belong and start knowing what's really going on because what might be going on underneath the mess? And you'll start at it. And maybe it's worse than you thought. And it's discouraging. And so it's like, you know what? I'm just going to let it go. Now here's something that I've found that's made a big difference for me. And I think one of the things that we need to start doing is we need to pick a corner. So now what I've started to do when it comes time for me to clean is I pick a corner of the house. I'll pick one room and one corner in that room and I'll start cleaning. And I'll start cleaning this one corner of the living room. You know what happens this time if I find a book that belongs in the bookshelf? I take that book, I turn around and I toss it in the direction of the bookshelf. And then as I'm going, I find a cup maybe that belongs in the kitchen sink. This one's not full of, it's just water. It's just water, everybody. And I take that cup and I turn and I throw it in the direction of the kitchen sink. And then I find a piece of laundry and I throw that, knowing that sooner or later I'll get there. Sooner or later I'll get there, and I'll take care of it when I get there, but for right now I'm here. And I clean that corner, and I get that corner clean, and I back up far enough, and before I know it, I'm in another corner. And before I know it, I'm in the middle of the room, and then I'm in the other corner, and finally I'm in the last corner, and I can stand up and I can look, and the room is clean. Man, maybe what we need to do when it comes to our finances is pick a corner. I mean, many of us, Abby and I, for a while, man, we did not really know the condition of our accounts. We knew they were tight, but we never really jumped in and knew and managed them well. And I think one of the reasons we hesitate to know the state of our finances or jump in and manage them is we feel overwhelmed by the mess that they are, and it's like, well, why the heck even bother? Maybe a good place for you to start is to pick a corner. Maybe a corner that you need to pick. Here's some things. Maybe for the very first time, you need to take an inventory of all your expenses. Of all your expenses. For the first time, maybe write down a list of everything, every bill that you pay every month, every bill that you pay every quarter, every bill that you pay even just once a year. And really what you're doing there is the beginnings of a budget. You're starting a budget, and we've got to get to a point where a budget is not a dirty word. It seems boring to spend money that way, but the amount of stress that this can reduce is amazing. Dan said this last week in his sermon, that it will actually give you freedom as you develop this budget, but you got to stay with it. Man, one really good application is maybe you need to set aside time now to join our Financial Peace University class that we'll offer in the spring. We just finished a class, last class. It's a 9-week class. The last class just finished November 6th. A couple that goes to our Twinsburg, Macedonia campus. They lead it, Nate and Katie Thomas. They had 13 families go through it. It's a 9-week class, started in September, ended November 6th. And those 13 families in 9 weeks, together, they paid off a total of $22,901 in just 3 months. Those 13 families saved $41,998 in those 3 months. And those 13 families cut up 32 credit cards. 2 families are giving for the first time, and 5 families are giving more significantly now than they were. I don't know who all was a part of that class. It is very likely that there are a couple of you sitting in here this morning, and I seriously just want to applaud you. That takes discipline. That takes hard work. That takes focus, and that's inviting God in before there is a problem. Proverbs 13:12 says this, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a dream fulfilled is the tree of life." I think so often we end up giving up on trying to get a hold of our finances because We try, and it doesn't feel like we're making any difference. That hope gets deferred. Every time we try something, something else breaks, and you've got to take care of it. And it's like, what do I do? And I'm trying here. And so maybe one of the things that you need to start doing is you need to set up a way that you can see you are headed towards your dream. And so one of the things that Abby and I have done, this helps me, is we're going after our debt. We're going after it aggressively. And we've got a chart for each debt. And each month I color in a little bit so that I can see that we are making progress, and I can remind myself that we are running towards our dream. That hope is not deferred, that it is worth it, and it is working. But we've got to stay disciplined, because there is nothing that will demotivate you more than not being able to achieve your goals. It can feel almost impossible to keep working when you do not feel like the room is getting any cleaner. And what I'm finding is that when I take time to break my goals down into smaller steps and goals, it motivates me to keep moving forward. So a question I want you to ask yourself this morning is, what is one small goal you need to make this week in order to move yourself one small step in the direction of living out God's wisdom in your finances and being just a little bit better today than you were yesterday? What is one small goal that you need to set so that you could be just a little bit better today than you were yesterday? Maybe one of those things, maybe a simple goal would be, you know what, I'm going to make that inventory of my expenses. Maybe one small step that you can make is say, I'm going to go home, I'm going to Google wisdom, Bible, Proverbs, finances, and just see what it is that God has to say about your money. Maybe that's that one small step to help make you better today than you were yesterday. Maybe you could make a plan. Maybe you could actually plan to be part of our holiday dollars. We're doing holiday dollars again this year, and the idea is that you would bring $1 in for each person in your family who attends Momentum. And at the end of each Sunday, we combine the attendance at both campuses, and then we take that amount of money and go bless someone in the community, telling them that we are doing it because Jesus is generous and Jesus loves them. Maybe you could plan to be a part of that, to skip that one coffee or to skip that one iced tea or whatever it is that costs $1, so you could come in and you planned. You didn't just react, but you planned to be a part of that. Proverbs 21:5 says this. We don't have a slide for you, but Proverbs 21:5 says this. I want you to write that down. I'd love for you to memorize that this week. Proverbs 21:5 says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. So I want to give you all one goal to help you be more diligent. And regardless of what state your accounts are in, one of the things that we need to be able to do is be disciplined. And so I want to give you some homework that I know for a fact you can go home and practice this week and help you create some forward momentum to achieving your goals, even in your finances. You ready? I want everyone to do this. I would love for you to post pictures online. Your homework this week, starting Monday morning, is to go home and make your bed. Husbands, make your freaking bed. Students, make your freaking bed. Mom and dad, if you make your students' bed, stop. During the middle school year, students are learning to make decisions that will follow them into adulthood as well as their abstract thought. Some of these core behaviors, if not learned in middle school, they will carry over into adulthood. Things like brushing your teeth, putting on deodorant, making your bed, and other everyday tasks. I've heard it said that if you show me a middle schooler who didn't put on deodorant or brush their teeth during middle school, then I'll show you an adult who did not fill out a college application, but probably had a parent do it for them. Students, if you want to do well with your money, start being disciplined now so that you can be disciplined when you do have money. Start with making your bed. Living out godly wisdom in our finances is going to be hard work. It is going to take discipline. And starting every day by making your bed already gets you achieving something for the day before you even walk out of your room in the morning. And once you prove to yourself that you can be disciplined enough to do that, there is nothing else that you will not be able to stay disciplined and accomplish. And because you are taking care of details that no one sees, you will begin to be able to take care of details that everyone sees. I can't, and I should not, set your goals for you, especially financially. But I can tell you that my wife and I have a goal to be generous. And my guess is that that is something that you would like to be known for as well. And there's a whole lot more we could say about this. But one of the things I know for a fact, Jesus says in John 10:10 that he came to give us life and so that we could experience life to the full. And one of those things that God does not want us to experience, and one of those things that God hates that we are experiencing, is if we are owned by our finances, if we are enslaved in debt, if we do not have control of our finances. And to live out that godly wisdom, and to find that freedom that God wants us to find, it is going to take focus. It is going to take drive. It is going to take discipline. And it is most definitely going to take some humility. Enough humility to be willing to invite God in before there is a problem. Start listening to and implementing his wisdom today. The goal is make yourself just a little bit better today than you were yesterday. Let's pray. God, we love you. Man, God, wisdom is tough to listen to. Your wisdom's tough to listen to. God, especially like with our finances. And God, it is, when we've got things that we know that are piling up and these debts that we got to pay, God, got to remember that you didn't want us to experience those debts in the first place. And so, God, I pray that you help us to find your wisdom, that you'll give us the guts and the trust that's needed to live out your wisdom in our finances. God, and we are asking you to show up. God, and if we are willing to ask you to show up when there is a problem, God, help us be willing to ask you in and to play a part before there's a problem. God, we love you, and we are trying to really move forward and trust you in ways that you want us to trust you. It is in your Son's holy and awesome name we ask these things. Amen.